Welcome to Grudge and Grace. I'm Anglina, your guide through the terrifying, the mysterious, and the true stories that still linger in the shadows. On this show, I share chilling encounters, real-life horror stories, and the kinds of events that leave a mark long after they're over. Tonight's story takes us to the steep, winding roads of the Appalachian Mountains, where three truck drivers, each just doing their job, encountered something that changed them forever. Some say it was just a storm. Some say it was something else entirely, but the locals have a name for that stretch of road. Dead Woman's Pass. Let me tell you what happened. Three truck drivers, Arjun, Lyle, and Mason, were hauling cargo overnight through a remote section of the mountains somewhere between Western Virginia and Eastern Kentucky. They weren't from the area, but they'd all heard the same warning from other drivers on the radio. Avoid the ridge when it rains. But that night, a tight deadline and a storm rolling in fast forced them up through the pass. Arjun was the lead, 38, solid, dependable. He'd been driving for years. Lyle, everyone called him Lala, was behind him. A bit of a joker, but good at what he did. Mason was the youngest, newer to the job. Quiet, focused, but with eyes that never stopped scanning the road. They had their CBs on, all three rigs in a tight convoy. Light rain had started, mist was creeping over the hills, and the road was already slick. As they approached a sharp curve carved into the mountainside, Arjun's voice came over the radio. "Anyone else see that? On the side of the road?" Lala chuckled. "What, the fog? Or that ghost you've been waiting for?" "No, I saw a woman," Arjun replied. "White dress. Standing on the shoulder, her head was down, barefoot." Silence followed. Mason clicked his mic. "I didn't see anyone. You sure?" "I know what I saw," Arjun said quietly. They rounded the curve. Nothing there. But that's when the weather shifted. Hard rain slammed the trucks, lightning began crawling across the sky, visibility dropped to almost nothing. That's when an old man, soaked to the bone, flagged them down from a small pull-off. Arjun rolled to a stop, window down just enough to hear him. "Turn back," the man said. His voice cracked like dried wood. "She walks in this weather. Always does. And she hates truckers." Arjun blinked. "Who?" But the man just backed away into the trees. No flashlight, no car, just gone. They pressed on. The rain got worse. Trees on both sides swayed like they were trying to warn them. Lyle, always the skeptic, laughed it off over the radio. Guy probably drank moonshine and wandered out from his cabin. But none of them were laughing 10 minutes later. As Arjun rounded another blind curve, a figure stepped into the middle of the road. He slammed the brakes. The truck skidded and came to a stop inches from her. She didn't move. She just stood there. White dress, long hair, no shoes, her face wasn't visible, hidden by her soaked hair and the dark. The other two trucks halted behind him. Arjun shouted into the radio, "You see her? Tell me you see her." Lyle responded, "There's nobody there." Mason said, "I swear I don't see anyone, Arjun." But she was there. Arjun stepped out with a flashlight, heart pounding. The beam swept the road. She was gone. Not a footprint, not a drop of water, out of place. He climbed back into the cab, hands shaking, and continued forward. That's when things began to twist. They passed the same tree 3 times, the same rock outcrop, the same shattered guardrail. Time wasn't moving right. It was 3:12 a.m. on Arjun's dash clock. It stayed 3:12 every time he checked it, over and over. Lyle's voice came through, quieter now. "Feels like we're stuck in something, like a loop." Then Mason's voice came through, shaky. "I saw her." Lyle replied, "What?" "Behind my truck," Mason said. "Just for a second. In the mirror, she was crouched, like a spider." His voice broke. "She smiled at me." They tried to floor it. But now, no matter how fast they drove, they weren't making any progress. The road kept bringing them back to the same overlook. Then the CBs cut out, just static. Arjun's headlights flickered. In the beams ahead, he saw a doll lying in the road. Torn. Wet. One eye missing. He didn't stop. Behind him, Mason screamed over the radio, "She's in my cab!" That was the last thing they heard from him. When Arjun and Lyle stopped and ran to Mason's truck, it was empty. No blood, no signs of struggle. The engine was still warm. The door had been locked from the inside. On the seat was the doll. Later, at sunrise, the fog lifted. Arjun and Lyle reported the incident to state police. They searched the mountain all day. No sign of Mason, no footprints, no woman in white. Just that road. Winding, endless, still wet from the storm. They say Mason's rigs still get spotted once in a while, rolling slowly along that mountain road with no driver behind the wheel. And sometimes, on misty nights, a woman is seen standing in the center of the road waiting, head down, face hidden, waiting for the next truck to stop. A seasoned driver named Ray Monroe had been hauling steel beams from Detroit to Memphis, a route he had driven at least 20 times. But that night, somewhere outside southern Illinois, a construction zone pushed him off his usual path. His GPS rerouted him through a narrow two-lane called Old Cutler Road, a name he didn't recognize and hadn't seen on any trucker maps. It was around 2:40 a.m., no lights, no road markers, no cell signal. Ray didn't think twice. He had his coffee, a full tank, and miles to cover. But about 10 minutes down that stretch, he passed something strange, a wooden sign nailed to a crooked tree. It read, "No through trucks after midnight." He muttered, "Okay, weird," and kept driving. A few miles later, the mist rolled in. It wasn't foggy anywhere else on the route, just this patch. Thick, slow-moving, clinging to his windshield like wet cotton. The trees lining the road were leaning unnaturally close to the pavement, like they were eavesdropping. Ray's radio crackled. It wasn't on. Then a voice, low and distant, came through. "You should have turned around, Ray." He blinked, pulled the CB mic from the dash, and responded, "Who the hell is this?" Silence. Then, static, followed by something stranger. Knocking, not from outside the truck. From inside, the sleeper cab behind him. Ray gripped the wheel tighter and didn't look back. He hadn't picked up a hitchhiker, hadn't let anyone in. He kept driving, convinced it was just fatigue playing games. But the knocking came again, 2 soft taps. Closer this time, like whatever was back there was inching toward him. He finally snapped, pulled the truck over, flung open the sleeper curtain, and found it empty. No one. Nothing. Just his duffel, a blanket, and his logbook. Ray took a deep breath and shut the curtain again. That's when he saw the woman in the road. Pale, barefoot, standing directly in front of the truck, facing away. Her arms hung limp at her sides, and her long black hair clung to her neck like wet rope. Ray honked. She didn't flinch. He leaned out the window. "Hey, you need help?" No response. Just the faint sound of humming, a tune he didn't recognize, something old. Then, slowly, she turned her head. Not her whole body, just the head. And even from 20 feet away, Ray could tell. She had no eyes, just smooth skin where her eyes should have been. He shifted into reverse, tires kicking up gravel, and backed up as fast as his rig allowed. But she didn't move. She didn't even blink, if she could blink. He threw it into drive and swerved around her, hands shaking. The road ahead twisted unexpectedly. He missed the curve and clipped the guardrail. As he corrected, his headlights passed a moss-covered mile marker. It read, "Mile 43. Ray squinted. He'd seen that same marker earlier. It was broken at the top. The moss had grown in a perfect diagonal slash across the number. Another mile passed. Another marker. Mile 43. Identical. Same slash. Same moss. Ray's knuckles whitened. He pushed the gas. 10 minutes later, another mile 43. He was driving in circles. The mist thickened again, then the CB lit up. This time, the voice wasn't distant, it was right in his ear. You can't leave her road, Ray. No one ever does. Ray yanked the cord, ripping the CB from its mount. But the voice didn't stop. It was coming from the speakers. The vents, the floor, everywhere. She's been waiting for you since the last time. That stopped him cold. He hadn't been here before, had he? But then the memories came fast, jagged, like shattered glass. He remembered being 17, riding shotgun in his uncle's pickup, coming home late one night from a county fair, and that woman, the one standing in the road, the one they hit. His uncle had panicked, told him not to speak of it. They never stopped, never reported it. They just drove on. Ray had buried it for decades. Until now. He slammed the brakes. The truck skidded to a stop. He stumbled out, boots crunching on gravel, heart pounding in his chest. "Where are you?" he shouted. The mist didn't move. Then, right in front of him, she appeared. Not walked. Not floated. Just appeared. She was inches from his face. Skin gray, mouth stitched shut, and across her neck a jagged scar like she'd been pulled from a wreck and never buried. She reached for him and whispered through that closed mouth, "You didn't stop." Ray fell back against the truck, scrambling into the cab, slamming the door, locking it twice. He started the engine, foot to the floor. The truck roared down the road. This time, no mist. No woman. No curve. And then, light. Bright, blinding light. It was a rest stop, a real one. Clean, bright, vending machines glowing, a station attendant sweeping the floor. Ray parked, got out, fell to his knees, and for a long time he just cried. He never told anyone the full story. But he never drove at night again. And the stretch of Old Cutler Road? No GPS shows it now, no maps list it, truckers say it doesn't exist. But those who've seen it, they say you'll know you're there when the mile marker reads 43. Again and again and again. And when you see her, don't stop. But if you already have, she's already in the back seat. Or worse, the passenger side, just waiting to be remembered. Third story. There's a truck stop just off Interstate 80 in Nebraska, the kind you might miss if you blink during a long overnight haul. Locals call it Exit 31, but most truckers have given it a different name. The Never Light Stop. Because the lights there, they don't stay on. The story I'm about to tell comes from Ben Holloway, a long-haul driver from Indiana who took a solo job running refrigerated freight across the Midwest. It was his first winter drive in years. Snow was thick, and the temperature had dropped below freezing. He'd been on the road for 9 straight hours when he saw the flickering neon sign on the side of the highway. The lights spelled hot food, showers, gas, all night. Ben pulled in. The truck stop looked old. Paint peeling, half the pumps taped off, but the building was still lit barely. A faded red open sign buzzed weakly in the front window. Inside, everything felt off. It was warm, but not comfortable. The air smelled like burnt coffee and wet carpet. The overhead lights hummed, and not one other customer was in sight. Behind the counter stood a woman in her late 50s, hair pinned back, wearing a stained polo with a name tag that read Cora. Ben offered a nod. "Cold night," he said. She didn't answer at first, just stared at him. Then, slowly, she said, "You're the second truck tonight." Ben raised an eyebrow. "Busy stretch, huh?" "No," Cora said. "That's the strange part." Ben grabbed a sandwich from the cooler and went to the register. Cora didn't move to ring it up. She just asked, "You didn't see anyone when you pulled in, did you?" Ben shook his head. "Nope, just me." Cora's eyes narrowed. "Then where's the other driver's rig?" Ben paused. He hadn't seen another truck in the lot. Just his. Cora didn't say anything more. She took his cash but didn't hand him change. She kept looking over his shoulder toward the window. Ben glanced back. Nothing there, just darkness and snow. He took his sandwich and left, deciding to skip the restroom and keep moving. But as he stepped outside, the wind cut through him like glass, and he noticed something strange. His trailer door was open, not wide, just slightly ajar. He was certain he'd locked it. He climbed up and opened the back fully, flashlight in hand. Nothing looked disturbed. The freight was sealed, but in the far back corner, on the cold metal floor, were wet footprints. Bare feet. Ben backed out fast, slammed the door shut, locked it again, and climbed into the cab. He turned the ignition. Nothing. Battery dead. His rig had been fine minutes ago. He checked the dashboard. Lights flickered weakly, then went dark. He hit the radio. Static. Tried his phone. No signal. Ben sat there, breath clouding the glass, staring out at the parking lot. Then, slowly, the lights inside the truck stop went out. First, the front windows. Then the flickering sign. Then total blackness. Ben's cab light was the only thing left, dim and fading. In the glow of the windshield, he saw something move. A man, about 6 feet tall, walking slowly between the pumps. Wearing a driver's jacket. Head down. No visible face. Ben grabbed the tire iron from beside his seat and locked the doors. The man didn't stop walking. Didn't look around. Just moved in a slow, dragging step toward the back of Ben's trailer. Ben opened the door, boots hitting the snow. He ran toward the station, shouting, banging on the glass. But there was no answer. Cora was gone. The building empty. A smell hit him, thin old oil, burnt rubber, and something metallic. He turned back to the lot. The man was gone. Ben climbed back into his cab, locked everything, sat silently. Then, from the sleeper behind him, a whisper, "Get out." He turned. Nothing there. Then, the voice came again, this time louder. "Get out." Ben reached for the door handle, but the cab filled with cold. His breath crystallized instantly, frost curling across the windshield from the inside. The rearview mirror cracked with a soft snap. In that mirror, Ben saw the face of a man behind him, gray, bloated, eyes white like spoiled milk, and a smile that didn't match the shape of his jaw. Ben screamed, slammed the door open, ran toward the snow-covered lot. Then everything blinked white, and the next thing he remembered was a tow truck driver shaking his shoulder. It was morning. Blue sky, birds chirping, no snow, no damage to the truck. Just the trailer door. Still locked, still sealed, but inside, the refrigeration had stopped. Everything was spoiled. And Ben, he never drove through Nebraska again. Cora, the woman at the counter, was never found. The fuel station? It had burned down 6 years earlier. Locals say every winter, when the snow gets heavy and the air turns still, exit 31 reappears just for a few lost drivers. They say it's a place where the past walks and something colder than winter waits in the back of the cab. And if you hear a whisper telling you to get out, you listen. Because not everyone does.